Hey guys, it's Chris. From workhorses to prize steeds to ones bred for battle, join me as I reveal the biggest horse breeds in the world. Number 9. Andalusian Horse. The country of Spain has been known for its beautiful horses and their abilities for many years. But one of the most famous of the lot is the Andalusian Horse. A horse so respected in the country that it's also known as the pure Spanish horse. This horse's ancestors came from the Iberian Peninsula, and they've lived here for thousands of years before humans ever came along to ride them. They're also a breed of horse that hasn't changed too much over the years, because they honestly already had a lot going for them. They're big, almost 6 feet in height, and they're strong and yet agile, as they only weigh about 1,200 pounds at most. And because of that, Spain has used them throughout the years as war horses, as well as being a key horse that nobility used to carry them around and look dignified. They were also one of the first horse species ever that was considered for dressage, and even taught certain moves associated with it. Andalusian horses are also known for their great intelligence and their sensitivity, which may be why many people have used them, because it likely makes them easier to train. They're also popular in movies because they convey a certain stance and are believed to help sell the fact that they are often war horses in those movies. The world over truly does appreciate the beauty and power of the Andalusian horse, and have made many sub-breeds of them as a result. Number 8. Australian Draught Horse. Many horse breeds in the course of history have been bred from mixing in lots of other breeds, and getting the best result from mixing of those genes. And the Australian Draught Horse is one such case of this happening, and the result was making one of the biggest horses around. This species was created from breeding Clydesdales, PERCHERONs, Shires, and Suffolk punches, and the Australian Draft House stud book became a reality in 1976. The point of this much crossbreeding was to make them the best possible horse for the environment of Australia, and they succeeded in that regard. Draft horses are meant to be work horses, and the people of Australia had a lot of work that needed to be done, with these horses being more than capable of doing so. At first, the Australian Draught Horse was used strictly for agriculture. But then, when gold mining became a big part of the country, they needed a lot of these horses to help with the various processes associated with mining. Today, the Australian Draught Horse are used in lead, novelty, ridden, and draft competitions, and is still valued as a working horse on small farms throughout Australia. As for the sizes of the Australian Draught Horse, usually you can find one that's about 5 feet in height, with some pushing that even higher. And just as impressive, their size allows them a lot of weight, and thus they can be up to 1,900 pounds at times. Number 7. Russian Draught Horse. It should not be too much of a surprise that the Russians have their own version of the draft horse, as they would need horses to help them with the fields in their lands and the terrain that isn't hospitable. These horses were made around the 1860s, and they were popular for farm work and more. One of the characteristics that made them stand out was that they were able to grow very fast and be very fertile very quickly, which meant faster breeding and more horses, and they could last quite a long time. Their average height was about 5 feet, so they weren't the biggest horses around, but they could get the job done, and that's all Russia really needed. Their numbers were decimated by both world wars, though, and it wasn't until the 1980s that their numbers truly fully bounced back into the many tens of thousands. And here's an interesting side note: while the horses were used a lot for work, the females were held for their milk. They were able to bring quite a yield of milk that could be sold for profit. This is one of the more popular uses for the horse in the modern day. And now for number 6. But first, be sure to share your horse stories in the comments below. Love to read them. And be sure to subscribe if you're new to World List. Number 6. Dutch Draft. Another horse that has a work history, the Dutch Draft Horse was a breed that became quite popular after World War I. Specifically, they were born from the heavy draft mares of the province of Zeeland with Ardennes and Brabant stock from neighboring Belgium. As the name suggests, they were built to be workers in the fields, along with the farmers and the rest of the agricultural industry. At one point in time, they were one of the most important Dutch horse breeds because of their abilities. They were about 5 feet in height and had the stamina to stand through long days on the farm and in the field. Just as important, though, they were bred to be rather calm in their temperament, which may not seem like a big deal, but when you're looking for a horse to help you get work done faster, you definitely want a breed that'll listen to you and not bite back, so to speak. Sadly, not unlike many other horse breeds, when World War II came around, and the rise of more efficient building machines came to help out the farmers even more, the Dutch Draft breed saw a sharp decline in needs and desires. That being said, they are still used to this day for farming, just not in the numbers they were used to. What's more, many competitions in Dutch areas use the Dutch Draft for various events, including being used for logging competitions. And while they are smaller than certain other draft horses, they're still tall enough to get work done and even tower over humans at times. Number 5. Suffolk Punch. The Suffolk Punch is a very curious breed of horse for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is because it's a rather endangered species in regards to horses, which is bad because they are, in fact, the oldest breed that Great Britain has ever produced, and they're working to try and bring back the numbers of this stately horse despite some self-imposed restrictions. As for the horse itself, it is tall and heavy. It can be up to 6 feet tall at times and weigh over 2,200 pounds. Furthermore, due to their breeding, they're only one color, chestnut. This is very different from other horse breeds, which can at times be a wide variety of colors. What might surprise you is that despite their size, they were first bred for agriculture, and their movements were known to be quite agile, which made them very popular. Plus, their forms were very imposing. The breed has a powerful arching neck, well-muscled, sloping shoulders, a short, wide back, and a muscular, broad croup. Legs are short and strong with broad joints, sound, well-formed hooves, and little or no feathering on the fetlocks. Their history dates all the way back to 1586, and again were made by farmers who needed a horse who could handle the work and also work well with the farmers themselves. So in their breeding, they made sure the horse was very docile. The big hit to this species came in World War II. But not because of combat per se, these were not war horses. Rather, these horses were sent in great numbers to be turned into meat and other supplies, and thus their breed numbers plummeted. Over time, the British and American versions of the Suffolk Punch did rise in numbers, and you'd think that these two nations would work together to bring the numbers up even more, right? Well, wrong. You see, the United Kingdom has a very strict breeding regimen, and at one point the US versions of the Suffolk Punch breed were horses that weren't allowed among the British breeding system. Thus, all Suffolk Punch horses are not allowed to breed with any British versions because it would taint the bloodline and the purity of the horse. Despite this, the Suffolk Punch is recovering, and many dozens of them have been born and raised in recent years. Number 4. Belgian Draught. At one time, the Belgian Draught was interchangeable with another breed of horse, known as the Brabant. However, after World War II, the species became its own breed, and one that had some very recognizable differences from its counterpart. First and foremost, the Belgian Draught is bigger and yet lighter than the Brabant. Yet don't mistake this as a light horse. It's anything but. They can be over 5.5 feet tall and weigh over 2,000 pounds. Which is good because the Belgian Draught has been used in all sorts of work over the years, including being used not just in farming but in forestry systems. Their strength is rather incredible. A pair of these horses were able to pull 17,000 pounds. Just as important though, their desirability didn't drop over the years, even with the rise of machines to help farmers. They can still pull incredible loads as mentioned before, and yet they're also seen as horses that are perfect for casual riding through the land and saddle riding for training. A fun fact about Belgian Draught is that at one time the breed held a record for being the biggest horse in the world, period. Its name was Brooklyn Supreme, and while it wasn't the tallest horse around, its girth was legendary, as it was said to weigh about 3,200 pounds. Though some are quick to dispute the claim, it should be noted that even if it was exaggerated a little, it would still be close to 1,000 pounds over what the average Belgian Draught weighs. Number 3. Percheron. The breed known as the Percheron is a bit of a mystery in terms of its origin. We know for a fact that the species was bred in the western parts of France via the Perche province, and that's how the horse got its name. But where exactly it came from and how it was bred into the horse that was found centuries ago, well, that's unknown. Guesses run rampant. We know that it was found by France in the 17th century, making it a very old breed of horse. But some people believe it could have been birthed all the way back in 496 AD, which would make it potentially one of the oldest horse breeds still alive today. What might surprise certain horse fans is that the Percheron didn't come from the typical stock that you might expect a large horse like this to be bred from. It was crossbred with many kinds of horses, including Arabian and several Oriental horses. And that continued all the way up until the 19th century. And even with that stopping, the effects of that breeding still show in the horse today. In terms of size, the Percheron can be huge depending on who is breeding them, including being well over 6 feet in height. These horses were very popular back in World War I and were used for various acts, and over time, they were shipped to the United States, where they became one of the most popular horse breeds in the nation. In the 1930s, the Percheron filled up 70% of the work horses that were in the US. Nowadays, the horse is mainly used for show and occasional work. Number 2. Clydesdale. Arguably the most famous horse in the world today, the Clydesdale stands above all others as one of the most beautiful and biggest horses on the planet. But don't let their beauty blind you. These are work horses, and some of the biggest and strongest in the world. They were built to help with agriculture and be draft horses for various nations, including Scotland, where they were born. What might surprise you, though, was that originally the Clydesdale breed was small. Over time, they grew and became more and more famous, and this was done intentionally through generations of breeding, as the owners of these horses wanted taller and stronger horses to use during events like parades. They succeeded because the Clydesdale now on average can stand over 6 feet tall, as well as weigh over 2,000 pounds in some cases. These changes over the years have made the Clydesdale a very powerful and popular horse, especially in the times before World War I. However, after then, the Clydesdale numbers fell into a severe decline because of the rise of machines. While they have made a comeback of sorts in recent years, it's not enough to create a stable number of horses for the breed. Another thing that might surprise you about the Clydesdale is that they're honestly prone to a number of afflictions that can harm them. Clydesdales have been identified to be at risk for chronic progressive lymphedema, a disease with clinical signs that include progressive swelling, hyperkeratosis, and fibrosis of distal limbs that is similar to chronic lymphedema in humans. Another health concern is a skin condition on the lower leg where feathering is heavy. Colloquially called Clyde's itch, Clydesdales are also known to develop sunburn on any pink skin around their faces. Despite these woes, however, the Clydesdale horse remains one of the most famous kinds of horses around. The most famous of the lot is the Budweiser Clydesdales, which are so beautiful and famous they had yearly commercials in the Super Bowl, and were easily one of the most beloved of the Super Bowl commercials because of the big and beautiful horses. Number 1. Shire. Not to be confused by a land from Middle-earth, the Shire horse is a species of horse that was built and bred for a singular purpose: work. Or to put it a bit more specifically, it was bred to be a British draft horse. These horses were made so that farmers could put them into labor situations that they would have a hard time doing themselves, including plowing the fields, pushing carts, and more. It should be noted that they had a great success with the Shire, as it's documented as being one of the biggest and strongest horses in the world and in history, even holding records for its height and its weight at times. Just their average height can have them over 5.5 feet. This allowed them to do the work that was needed, and thus they were bred and shipped all over the world to farmers and others who might have need of them. The only reason that the Shire isn't as popular today is because of machines. They do the work they can't, and sometimes more efficiently. Due to this, they're now an endangered breed. But people are trying to save the breed, and many consider the Shire to be a perfect horse for beginning riders, thus ensuring their importance and need for numbers. Thanks for watching, everyone. Which one of these horses was your favorite? Have you ever seen one of these horse species up close and personal? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe to World List, and I'll see you next time.